Hey, Fedheads, you're tuned in to another episode of Cigar Chat. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon. We are broadcast live around the world, picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network. Of course, you're tuned in to CigarFederation.com. Cigar Chat is brought to you by Gurkha Cigars, makers of the world's finest cigars. And things are a little frosty here in Calgary. You can see I'm not sitting out on my deck because there's a good reason, and we'll get into that in a minute. But Logan, what's going on down in sunny Austin?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it sunny. It's a little chilly. It's
Yeah,
like,
what do you guys switch place with, like Vancouver? So what's going on down there?
I don't know. It's just cold, and I'm getting ready to go to India on Saturday. So yeah,
What's the temperature in India right now?
It's actually quite temperate. Actually, it's they just got out of the rainy season, so I'm looking forward to about 75, 80 degrees with a nice ocean breeze, but more mosquitoes than you have in Canada. Than cows that you have in Alberta. Let's use that analogy.
Yeah, they got a lot of mosquitoes down. I mean, we get some pretty serious mosquitoes down in the summertime, but I don't think we got anything on India.
I mean, they're like the size of Volkswagen bugs. I mean, they will straight up.
They'll carry you away.
They'll straight carry you away, man.
Straight up.
They're no joke.
Now, of course, that voice you hear in the background is our special guest tonight. I don't really think he needs an introduction because if you don't know who he is, you really shouldn't be tuning into the show.
Apparently he does.
Well, I'm going to introduce him anyways, but if you don't know who he is, you shouldn't be tuning into the show. None other than Steve Saka of Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Steve, thanks so much for joining tonight.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Since we're talking boring crap like weather, whereabouts are you dialing in from tonight?
I'm dialing in from my house in New Hampshire.
Oh, so, it's probably a little chilly in New Hampshire today.
Yeah, it's not so bad. Maybe mid-30s.
Oh, yeah, that's not very bad at all. I thought for sure you guys would be getting socked in by some serious weather by now.
No, it's been a pretty mild lead into winter. I mean, we got a few inches of snow the other day. You live in Canada. It's that nuisance snow. It's not a little enough that you can ignore it, but not enough to really do anything with. But you still have to do something with it.
Still have to do something with it.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of nuisance snow, but no, you know how it is. What is that in Game of Thrones? Long winter is coming. It's coming. It always does, and we'll get it. Just it's still about 3 weeks off before it gets really serious for us.
I keep hoping the Farmer's Almanac was wrong, but once again, the Farmer's Almanac nailed it, which is really unfortunate because I was really hoping that this was going to be one of those years where they got it wrong, and instead we got a temperate winter, but it is not looking that way at all.
It's actually amazing how seldom they get it wrong.
Yeah. It's not like flipping dice or flipping
coins. I get them to do my NFL picks or something.
Tell me about it.
Nonsense about the weather. Why don't you help me out with my survival pool each year? That would make sense to me. I could use that.
Tell me about it. We were tracking our NFL picks up until I think 3 weeks ago, and I'm having a pretty lousy year. I think I'm below 60%, which is almost to the point where you might as well just guess at that point.
I mean, there's some teams that you really, I mean, who would have thought the Panthers would be where they're at? Who would have thought the Jets would be as miserable as they are?
Well, as a Jets fan, I pretty much expected the Jets to be as miserable as they were.
And all those veterans on the field. You had a great season last year, comparatively. Bowles is a solid coach. I mean, you certainly didn't expect – I mean, did you watch a game on Monday night? I assume you did if you're a Jets fan.
I did, and of course, every time I watch a Jets game, my Scotch consumption just goes through the roof.
I mean, it's like they weren't even playing. It's like the Cleveland Browns haven't won a game this year, and it seems like they're playing harder than the Jets are playing.
I would agree.
Possible. I would agree. Jacksonville Jaguars. Bortles has more pick sixes than he has career wins, yet they seem to have more heart than the Jets have. What the Jets are doing is just, I don't know. It's very irritating to watch them play.
But maybe we can circle back to that in the After Dark segment because I love to crap on my Jets and talk football. But we're here, of course, to talk about cigars because this is Cigar Chat. So maybe we'll just kick it right off. And
is it?
It is. I know. I mean, I could talk Scotch and football all day long. But first off, let me just say, Steve, because during the show, one of the things you talked about, and we mentioned in a couple of shows that one of the things you don't tend to do is sort of talk up your cigars. Like you say, try it out. It's let me know what you think, et cetera, et cetera. But you were really big on the short Churchill Sobermesa, and I went out and I
start on for that cigar.
I picked up I picked up a 5-pack, and I got to tell you, that is a magical vitola within the Sobermesa.
Yeah, every once in a while you hit upon one of those cigars that's just everything seems right about it. And for me, that Sobermesa Short Churchill, it just got everything that I really want in the cigar. So, as soon as it was done, I was like, wow, this one's extra special. And I haven't felt this way about a cigar since probably when we were working on the Dirty Rat. That was the last time I like, wow, this is like something really special. And every time you get one of those particular cigars in a particular size and a particular blend where it just seems like all the stars and the moons aligned and everything, and that's the way I feel about the Sobermesa Short Churchill.
You got any left, or are you smoking them all through?
I have to tell you, it's become quickly one of our very best sellers. In fact, I think it's actually our number 3 selling SKU in the line, and that's occurred in just the last 4 months. And
Wow.
we pretty much sell out of it every single month. In fact, I was looking at the inventory numbers. I think right now we have like 8 boxes in the warehouse.
Wow.
Lord.
Well, I mean, it's a good Vitola for the time of the year, right? I mean, obviously the southern states are typically still pretty warm, but if you think about some of the northern states where it is getting chilly, it's a good size smoke because you're not having to devote an hour and 45, 2 hours to a cigar, and you're still getting a heck of a good flavor.
But the thing is, because of the way it's constructed, it isn't a 30-minute smoke either.
Yeah.
So,
It burns forever.
yeah, so when you spend your money, you legitimately, it's a 50-minute to an hour cigar if you want it to be. So, and that's not with you nursing it, that's smoking it at the pace I smoke, which is, I don't want to say super fast, but probably faster than a lot of other consumers. So, it doesn't, it's a lot of cigar in a very small package.
And how's the response been to the Mi Querida? I know that right out of the show, a lot of people were smoking it, and of course, everyone was talking about it. But what's the follow up been since the show?
I mean, look, it's too early to judge because you're in that honeymoon phase. But I mean, right now it's the same scenario. I mean, we're sold out of everything every month, and I don't even know if we have a back order right now with Logan or not. But I know that we right now have back orders that go. If nobody orders another cigar, we've sold every cigar we have coming in the country until the end of March. So, I mean, it's going really, really well. And I kind of expected it to go that well because of the type of cigar it is. I mean, it's more in the genre of what people expected from me. It's at a very accessible price point. They range between $8 and under $10. It's a real hearty, earthy, kind of dark, heavier cigar. So, I mean, there's a lot of things about it that make it you never can tell what's going to be commercially successful or not commercially successful, but it had all the right key points for it to have a much better than average chance of being commercially successful. And so far it appears to be. And I think that, and in the reviews, I haven't seen any bad reviews yet. I'm sure there's some out there.
If you look hard enough, there's always one out there.
Yeah, you could always find something.
Yeah, but I mean, I personally haven't seen any actual, really, I haven't even seen any mediocre reviews published by anybody yet. I'm sure there's some individual consumers that don't like it, which is what I would expect. But I haven't seen anything negative about the cigar. Everything I've seen has been very positive.
Do you think, looking back on the Sobermesa and the Mi Querida, do you think you had the same level of trepidation of the Mi Querida hitting the market as the Sobermesa? Because I know when you talked about the Sobermesa when it was first coming out, this is the sort of first relaunch, and you never, like you said, you never know until the sales start coming in how it's gonna do. Obviously, it's done very well. Everyone's been praising it since it came out. But did you have the same feeling with the Mi Querida?
No, I knew Mi Querida was going to be. Mi Querida is a much easier cigar to make into a commercial success. I mean, you're in a totally different price point. And the other cigar, the Sobermesa, I mean, honestly, most of the Sobermesa line, if somebody asked me what cigar would I say the consumer is for it, I would say the Padron Anniversario Smoker is a good candidate for the Sobermesa, okay? Because it's that kind of cigar. It's just very consistent, very balanced, very, there's a lot to it. So that's a much tougher consumer to get to than the consumer that, because you're now competing, once you're in that price point, you're competing against the, the top end Ashtons and the Davidoff and the Don Carloses and Padron Aniversarios and a lot of very well established products. And also, because it's got such a balanced and elegant and refined nature and there's a lot of complexity and nuances, those are things that people all say they want, but the reality is it's much easier to sell a much stronger, robust cigar consumer market because they're going to get much more enthusiastic about it in the short term. Whereas the other cigar, if you took the two brands on a long-term trajectory, I think in the end, Sobermesa will probably end up being so. But I'm saying 5 years in the future, I think Sobermesa has the ability to penetrate a much wider consumer base than Mi Querida has the ability to penetrate. There's far more smokers that could smoke Sobermesa, very pleasurable cigar, than there are smokers that would find Mi Querida to be a pleasurable cigar. Within the cigar geek community, the Mi Querida is going to be a much easier pickup for them of cigars that they smoke. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
So you're basically saying cigar media people are poor.
I'm not saying they're poor. I'm just messing with you. I'm not saying the media people. I'm saying the people that read the cigar media. I'm saying the cigar
I would agree with you.
Always going to lean towards these stronger, heavier cigars.
Right. Well, it's easier to sell something that's at $8 or $9 than it is something, $11 to $12, right? Like, I mean, that makes absolute sense.
I mean, from my point of view, Mi Querida is a much simpler cigar to make. Sobermesa is a pain in the ass to make. It's much more difficult.
Like, what goes into make it more complex to make? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just dead leaves all wrapped up. Like, is it the process? Is it
it's a combination of both. When you're working, the lighter a cigar is in body. So I would say Sobermesa on the whole is a medium body cigar, right? In the larger sizes, more mild medium, like the Gran Imperiales, you have less room for air. The tobacco has to be much more exactly the same all the time in order for you to get all those little flavors and nuances, to get those complexities. Whereas with Mi Querida, I mean, you're starting off with a wrapper that equals so much of the flavor being Connecticut broadleaf. You're dealing with all Nicaraguan tobaccos, and there's only 4 of them that you're dealing with, as compared to the other one has 5 different tripas. You're also dealing with a line in Sobermesa that has, a 44 ring gauge and a 46 ring gauge and a 54 ring gauge and a lot of different sizes and shapes. Whereas in Mi Querida, you're basically dealing with 48s, 52s, 56. You know what I mean? They're all pretty much, the proportionality on the blend is identical across the line. There's no giant tweaking that's necessary to go from Vitola to Vitola. It's just it's just a much simpler cigar, and because of the strength level, the tobacco doesn't necessarily always have to be want it to be the same, but there can be a little bit of differences here and there, even though it's the same tobacco. I don't have to be as individually critical of it because the body of the cigar, the strength of the cigar, is going to mask those little nuances. Whereas when you're smoking a Sobermesa El Americano, to make that cigar consistent and to always taste that way, you've got to be really incredibly anal about what tobacco is going into that cigar. Taste that way every single time. And the other thing, too, is, obviously for me, I'm nowhere near as critical of the burn on the Mi Querida as I am on the Sobermesa, because Connecticut broadleaf by nature, it's a relatively ugly burning wrapper. I mean, I want to burn evenly, I want to burn consistently, but I'm expecting a thicker mascara line around the edges. It's part and parcel with the leaf. I'm okay if it isn't burning 100% this way, as long as it catches up on itself. Whereas, with that Ecuador Habano in grade A and those finer materials, I mean, I want it to look like a magazine ad 9 out of 10 times and smokes it. So it's much more difficult to make Sobermesa than it is to make Mi Querida, from my perspective as a cigar maker.
We'll get into some audience questions after our first break here. Just a reminder to our audience, you're tuned to Cigar Chat, broadcast on CigarFederation.com, heard on the Armed Forces Radio Network around the world. This first segment is brought to you by Gurkha Cigars. Try the new 93 rated Heritage today or the Heritage Maduro. Check out your local B&M and ask them about it. Logan, you have another question. You look like you were poised to ask a question before I get into some audience questions.
No, it wasn't a question. I mean, that was kind of the answer I was looking for and I was expecting. I mean, I've got a question I want to ask Saka, but I don't know if I want to burn it this early in the episode.
All right.
But yeah, so you can ask if you've got any audience questions. I'll ask my question later.
What the heck is under the trash bag in the background there?
Wouldn't you like to know, Saka? Wouldn't you like to know?
Like a body in the corner.
There is. It's basically, it's all where all the bad blends go. It's like it's a little stacked up pile. But yeah, it's a secret. I will tell everyone after the first of the year what it is.
All right, I can't wait.
It's a new thing. It's a new thing. It's all good. It's
Steve,
funny because we've had like 3 or 4 episodes, and you're the only one that's ever actually called it out and or noticed it and said anything.
I'm very observant like that.
You are very observant.
I'm an attention to detail.
I've heard that about you. So I'm going to hop into it. It's a fairly quick audience question, and it's from Bob Dog. Bob Dog, thanks for your question. Stevie wants to know, would you ever consider making the Mi Querida 6x60? You know, I think there's been obviously a drive in the American market for the larger and larger cigars. You know, if even going back 3 or 4 years ago, it was unusual to see cigars over, 54, 56, and now people are pushing 60 plus.
The short answer is yes, but the actual answer is no. Because basically, until this thing gets sorted out with the FDA, nobody's going to be allowed to make any new sizes that weren't imported into the marketplace prior to August 8th of 2016. In the Mi Querida line, there's the Muy Gordo Grande, which is 6x56.
Yeah.
There's also a 7x64 Sucia, which just means more dirty. And so I have a 56, I have a 64, but I do not have a 60. And unless things change with the FDA, I don't know that they'll ever be allowed to be a 60.
So there's no stealth 6x60 Gordos hiding on a shelf at B&M just waiting for the right moment?
No. There's, like I said, there's a 56 and a 64. Yeah. You know, this is one of the downsides, you know, when the FDA rules got promulgated, you know, on May 10th, it really gave us a very short window. It gave us essentially 88 days to try to do everything we might ever want to do in our entire lives. And the problem is I'm literally a one-man band. I mean, it's me and it's 2 of my other family members. We're a small family company. And I miraculously, you know, I managed to get like 70 things done. And the fact that I got that much done is a miracle, but long term, is it enough? No. As soon as August 9th came, I was like, wow, I wish I'd done this, and this. But I don't know how it would have been possible because, I mean, we were like bats out of hell to get to that. So now I will say one thing about in the Mi Querida line, it's very linear. So in other words, the 6x48, the Fino Largo, is the strongest, spiciest of them. And the 6x56, the Muy Gordo Grande, is the smoothest. It's essentially the same flavor profile, and the only delta between them is how the shape of the size of the vitola impacts the flavor. So smaller, narrower, stronger, larger, wider, milder. They're still, you know, medium to full, but that's kind of where they gauge. Where it does deviate out is on the Mas Sucia, the 7x64. The 7x64, I really have always hated these style of cigars because I never ever smoked them. So I really wanted to try them. I wanted to make one that didn't taste like air. So oddly enough, I think the Mas Sucia, the 7x64, is actually the strongest of the Mi Querida line.
Wow.
It is really strong. I mean, it's by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, whoa, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. So that's the one area where it deviates. The Mas Sucia, the extra dirty one, is truly extra dirty. It's pretty potent.
So don't be smoking that on an empty stomach.
I wouldn't recommend it. No.
Logan?
I like to smoke Neanderthals and strong cigars on empty stomach. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm going to ask my question now because it's burning a hole in my pocket. So, Steve, we had I wouldn't say a kerfluffle on Facebook, but you posted a comment. I'm curious because now that I've got you, I want to hear, not Facebook, Steve, but when you're typing on your keypad. Like, so tell me, when you've made it fairly clear that you're like, I'm not a big fan of, people putting out a bunch of releases. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, one that have hipster names and stuff like that? Because I'm curious to hear your opinion on it. Because I think our opinion probably aligns, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts right now on it so we can have a conversation about it.
And it was your email that prompted...
I knew it. I figured.
Because literally I got it, 30 seconds before I did the Facebook post?
It was about like 5 minutes.
I got one from another company, from Ezra Zion, earlier in the day. And,
okay.
It's not even a... The thing is, I get probably now, I would say in an average week, I get like 5 or 6 different emails from a lot of small companies. And they all have like the next greatest, latest, most amazing whatever. And it's something that I've never heard of. And it's just this one-off kind of thing. And it's just, I can't buy into it as a cigar maker, as someone that understands what goes into actually making a good cigar. I'm just not buying that all of these emails that I'm getting are the most amazing, greatest, latest. They're the latest, but I can't buy into it. And I just feel as though some of it's disingenuous. Now, I understand from talking to consumers that have talked about the Crayola project. Is that what it's called?
Color Project.
I like the Crayola project. I think that would have been a better name. That's hilarious.
That would have been a better name. It would have been a little bit more.
Everyone I've talked to has actually said really good things about those cigars. So now, as a consumer, it's on me to go and try those particular cigars. And
check your mailbox in about T-minus 2 days.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. I hope you sent me an invoice with those.
I sure did. Don't worry. Send me back your credit card number, preferably the black Amex.
But I mean, it's one of these things where, it's kind of a catch-22. I mean, I like new stuff as a consumer, and I know it's all the new stuff that drives innovation, and it's what keeps our market very interesting and entertaining as a cigar consumer. And I know that as an industry, we also benefit from it because it spurs competition, and when you have competition, it makes things better. But sometimes some of it is a little bit absurd, where it gets a little bit crazy. So for me, it isn't a matter that it's something small or unique or whatever. It's just, I get the feeling that often a lot of it's just relatively mediocre crap that's just been branded and packaged in a different way. But it isn't really giving the consumer anything of real value that's worth all of the buzz behind it. And for me, that I think hurts us, because then it burns that relationship that you have with the customer. And that isn't in anyone's best interest to do that either. So I think that you have to come at it from an approach of, we only do well if the consumers are happy with what work we do.
Right.
So as an industry, sometimes all of this stuff, in some ways it helps us, and in other ways it hurts us. And I think it's important to try to separate out the wheat from the chaff. And it used to be that cigar reviews and, blogs and whatnot helped to do that, but they don't do that anymore. No. Because right now, every cigar you look at on a blog is a great cigar. They're all 90s to 93s. Always. You know what I mean? And you will always find 10 morons that think something's great and they're willing to take a picture of it and smile on Snapchat or whatever so that they can end up, getting some love from whoever the sales rep is or whatnot. So it's becoming, oddly enough, more difficult, I think, for a lot of consumers to separate out what's really good or bad without them going through a tremendous amount of trial and error. And I find that And I find that to be something that hurts us as an industry in the long run. Because the last thing I want cigar consumers, whether they buy my product or not, whatever they buy, I want them to really like. Because I want them to be cigar consumers. And they're not going to continue to be cigar consumers if they don't get something that they really find to be enjoyable and they find to be consistent. And eventually what I hope that, someday I'll end up on the rotary wheel where they go, you know what, I'll try that one. You know what I mean? But if they fall off because we've been selling them a sales pitch and they just keep getting burn, then that doesn't help, I don't think. So it's hard to separate the good from the bad anymore. It really is.
I like that response. I'm going to get into another audience question here before we get into our second break, and it's a quick one from Trip. Trip is my co-host for Sharing Our Pairings, and Steve, he wants to know, and I'm going to do my best Spanish here because I've been practicing every night for the last month. He wants to know when we can expect more todos los días, muestra de Saka, and the sin compromiso, when we're expecting those to...
Muestra de Saka, the exclusivo, they're made and they're in the aging rooms. I expect to be delivering those sometime in early March, but it's really going to depend on how they taste coming out of the aging room. And that's a limited amount because retailers pre-ordered them. So I made a few extra for me to smoke, but for the most part, it was to the batch. I had already been making them. I just had to make a few more to accommodate the orders. And some of the orders that I got from some of the customers were too large, so I had to cut them down. They don't know that yet, but I'm going to tell them that they're not going to
surprise.
Well, I mean, some of them just ordered stupid numbers like 100 boxes.
Oh, God.
Wow.
There's not 100 boxes to send anybody. So, so those I expect to come at that point. I think that somewhere during the course of 2017, I'm likely to do one, maybe two more than Muestra de Sakas, but I haven't really decided yet which. And I just kind of want to just take a little breather and not really make that decision until I get to February or so, and I can start looking at all the tobaccos, because I mean, all the blends were made and they were all imported before the date, but all of that stuff, as far as I was concerned, was a little too rushed. So, I mean, even though the blend will be the same and the materials will be the same, I wish I had had more time to work some of the materials. And that's particularly true with the Todos los Dias. I've gotten some pretty positive feedback on those. I didn't think they were not right as far as I was concerned after I've now smoked them months later. So that's a brand that I anticipate I'll probably be launching at the trade show next year for wider distribution. Again, it's a question of getting the materials to the point where I think they're appropriate for what I intended the blend to taste like. And Sin Compromiso is a disaster. It's just I ended up commissioning this experimental crop of Desperado to be grown in Esteli, which is stupid. And it was something that I wanted to try to do. And I did it. I now own the tobacco. That tobacco is ready to make cigars out of at this point. And I imagine that in January, that'll probably be one of my top priorities to make Sin Compromiso. But I'm not going to make very much of it because it's just stupid expensive and nobody should buy it.
That's a great sales pitch.
Well, you know what they say, Steve? He who dares wins. If you don't dare, you never know, right?
Just, once you figure out look, cigars, the only way to make cigars economical in the long term is to do them on a volume basis. And when you're dealing with an experimental crop,
that's it.
Oh yeah, that's another issue. But I mean, I'm obviously not vertically integrated. I'm very horizontally integrated. So I mean, I think Sin Compromiso, it just ends up being really, really expensive. It's a unique taste. It's different. The cigars will be impeccably made, but at the same time, can I say to a consumer he wouldn't have been better off buying two Sobermesa? I don't think I could say that to him. It's going to be a matter of personal choice. So I don't really want to take pre-orders for it because if I take pre-orders for it, retailers will just buy dumb amounts, and I don't want them to be stuck with cars. So I'm gonna go ahead and make some. I'm gonna sell them for what they cost to make, and we'll let the consumers decide whether it's worth the money or not worth the money. And that's really gonna kind of be my approach with it. So when will Sin Compromiso be shipped to the country? It could be as early as May. It may end up being September. In the end, it's really a non-issue. It's not gonna make anybody rich. Not gonna sell enough of them to make a difference to anybody. So it's kind of a back burner issue. But I'm stuck. I own the tobacco. It's mine, and I have to make use of it. Plus, too, not a lot of Esteli grown Desperado, so it's a rather unique leaf to work with. And I think that's one of the things that, look, long term, if this was successful and there were consumers for the taste profile, then you could say to yourself, oh, well, you know what? Let me grow many more manzanas of this and then try to get it to a point where it is more economical to farm. And then maybe you could get the cigar down to a much more reasonable price point, and there could be a future. The problem is, again, going back to the FDA, there's no way to make products to test that theory out with.
Right.
So it's kind of a weird item. It's kind of in la la land.
So I have a question for you after this next break, Steve. Just a reminder to our audience, you're tuned into Cigar Chat with our special guest, Steve Saka from Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. This is CigarFederation.com live, heard around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network. Thanks to all our Armed Forces Radio Network listeners out there. This segment is brought to you by Cigar Oasis. Cigar Oasis, the leaders and market innovators for cigar humidification. If your cigars are not protected by Cigar Oasis, you better get out there and do it. Set it and forget it today. So I alluded to the fact that I'm learning Spanish because I've been to Nicaragua like 7 or 8 times now. I've been to Cuba like 3 or 4 times, and I thought, it's kind of embarrassing that I don't even have passable Spanish at this point. So my question for you...
Imagine me.
Yeah.
I've been going since the early 90s, and my Spanish, if I'm not ordering an enchilada or getting a beer, I'm screwed. So, I mean...
Duolingo, it's a really good app. I'm putting in an hour a night. Yeah, it's getting me, poquito español, but I'm getting there. What's the deal with Manzana? So Manzana, of course, is a measure of it's the Nicaraguan measure of tobacco field, but of course I've discovered Manzana is an apple. So how is an apple a measure of a tobacco field?
Well, that's like a lot of things. First off, a Manzana is a very old method of measuring land.
Is it 2.2 acres?
It actually works out to be, I think, top of my head, I think it's closer to 1.7. Is that right?
Okay.
1.7.
I thought it was it's like upper ones, low twos. I know that, but I thought it was 2.2.
You know what, I can actually get you that answer.
Google says 1.72. Look at that. Steve is bang on.
Dude, that's what I thought. So what it is basically you would take the average height of one of your work. You look at all your workers. You pick the guy that's the average height, and he would walk 100 steps this way, and then he would walk 100 steps that way, and that's a Manzana.
Huh.
Which makes sense. So when you didn't have a ruling, when you didn't have a measuring stick. That's
right. There was no laser measurement. They had no tape measures. They had nothing. So it was basically, the average guy, this guy's 5'3", this guy's 5'8". Where's the guy that's 5'5.5"? Okay, you walk 100 steps that way, you put a stake in the ground, you walk 100 steps that way, you put a stake in the ground, there you go. I'm buying 1 manzana of land. And that's kind of a term that's used. And what's weird about it is sometimes when we use the word manzana, we don't even mean manzana. We actually mean acre. So they'll use the word interchangeably sometimes to actually mean an acre, and it doesn't mean a manzana at all. So it's one of these kind of just legacy terms that floats around.
Manzana's coconut shovels and water levels, brought to you by Nicaragua.
Dude.
Steve, we have an interesting question here from at Logix, and this is a good one. I know it was a hot topic a couple weeks ago on Cigar Chat, and it was a hot topic on Stogie Geeks. Coop talked about this, and I was actually a guest on his show, and we talked about this. And of course, right now there's some big retailers buying out other retailers. And do you have any thoughts on that? Do you have any feedback on what's happening in the marketplace right now?
I think it's just inevitable. I mean, what you have is you have a scenario where, Logan used the word vertically integrated. I mean,
Yep.
when you own the factory and you own the distributor and you own the importer and now you also own the wholesale and finally the retailer, it now lets you eat from all those various troughs. So you just end up having to make a collective profit, and you can make that profit in much smaller margins at all levels and ultimately be far more successful and bring cigars to consumers at a much lower price point. And as a result, and the other thing too is it gives them a way to control their market share, because by being the retailer too, they don't have to rely on the retailer supporting their brands. They end up actually getting brand penetration within a marketplace by being their own seller. So
Yep.
It's just a byproduct of the nature of business. I don't know. Do I think it's good? Do I think it's bad? I mean, in some ways it's good because it means consumers will get things for less money. In some ways it's bad because it means they're going to get less choice. And it also means that it's going to put a lot of undue pressure on some of the smaller retailers who focus on, products like my own that are less well known. But it's kind of a catch-22, and whatever my opinion of it doesn't really matter, because ultimately the consumers in these given marketplaces are going to decide whether they frequent these stores or they don't frequent these stores. And if they choose to frequent them, then they'll be successful. And I will say that I think that there are some I don't think it's the death bell that some of these brick and mortar retailers think it is. I think that you can successfully compete with these large establishments, but you have to do it in a different way. You're not going to be able to have as fancy a lounge. You're not going to have as cigars at the same price as some of their other cigars, but you choose to focus on the things that they don't focus on. They provide. I mean, Logan will tell you through his operation, he focuses on a particular clientele that buy a particular type of product, and he doesn't necessarily try to sell the most Monte Cristos to compete head to head with the big Monte Cristo, online retailers, because that isn't a game that he can win. But at the same time,
that's a losing game.
Right. But at the same time, those stores, those operations are so large, they don't want to focus on the color project. You know what I mean? To them, there's no value, and it's too much work, it's too much effort. There isn't enough sales to be had in it. So for them, they would look at that as being an anchor, where for like Logan, he would look at that and say, well, this is something I can provide as a service and a product to my customers that they can't get elsewhere. And so there is a way to compete. But this general trend, I mean, we see it now in Tampa, we see it in Dallas, we see it in New York City, we see it happening in South Florida, Houston. I mean, we're going to see it in Pittsburgh. We've already seen it start in Atlanta. You're going to see them going into these markets. Pittsburgh is definitely on the horizon too, and I'm surprised they haven't jumped into the Phoenix market yet, because Phoenix is a huge market to do it in, and I think Phoenix, I think Chicago, I think these are other locations that you're going to see more of these big mainstay companies open retail operations.
Now, as we come down to the last 16 or so minutes of our Armed Forces Radio Network segment here, Logan, I know you like to talk about the Missouri offer. Did you want to talk about the Missouri offer?
The Missouri offer. Well, Saka, let me just throw it out there and see if I can get you hooked here. And this is all assuming that we can get this FDA thing knocked out. Assuming we do, my grandparents own about, well, you do the math, about 7 Manzanas right on the banks of the Missouri River, extremely fertile land that used to grow tobacco, just like burley and stuff for cigarettes. I would be willing for you, at no cost, to use that land to try to grow some sort of tobacco that didn't suck. The only requirement is that, one, you got to teach me, and we got to tape a reality TV show, and you got to live at the house.
Yeah. Do I get a mule?
Dude, we got mules, man. We got donkeys. We got chickens. It's like we could all just live off the land. It would be probably the best 3 months ever. We even got a tobacco bar on the property.
My brain is saying no, but my heart is saying yes.
Oh, I know. Your heart's saying yes. I haven't gotten any takers. But if you were the first one to claim it, then, hey, it's all yours.
Oh, dude. There's not a chance in hell I'd be in on that.
Oh, I know.
I'm way too smart. You need to talk to Jeff about his Florida sun-grown project.
I know all about the Florida sun-grown, and that was well more financed with better tobacco and smarter people than myself.
Oh,
and I know that didn't turn out.
You can literally grow tobacco anywhere.
Right.
It's a very hardy crop. And the reason we don't grow it in the United States is that it's just a labor issue more than anything else. I mean, you can grow some very fine cigar dark tobaccos in the United States. It's just economically so unfeasible is the problem. It's a catastrophe. Now, what I think I would do is I think I'd grow some tobacco, take a picture, and then lie and tell people it came from there and be done with it.
And then just put like a fun name on it. Yeah, exactly, man. It would sell. It'd sell.
The Missouri Mule by Steve Saka.
Somebody has the mule already. Oh, no, it's the Mule Kick.
The Mule Kick.
Yeah.
Well, I know John. I think John would probably be okay with that. We could ask him. But yeah, the Missouri Mule by Saka and Logan. I'm telling you, big winner right there.
It's really sad because, in another year or so, I will probably be at a point where I would be ready to start engaging in those type of projects.
Potentially.
No, I mean, but, because look, obviously my focus has been on, starting up the new company, getting it financially solvent, getting some core products done, getting the tobacco laid in to make them consistent. And, I really haven't, and I haven't had any interest in, let me make 100 of these and 200 of those and 500 of this and that. But it is a lot of fun to do that type of stuff. And now with the way the rules are, I may never have the opportunity to do so. And that's kind of disappointing because it would definitely be, it would be enjoyable. Even though I know from a commercial business point of view, it doesn't make a lot of profit.
No.
But it is an enjoyable thing to do. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping when all this sort of sorts out and sifts through, I'm hoping it doesn't end up being as burdensome as it may potentially be. I'm hoping that there's still going to be a pathway for these type of projects.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you a question, a hypothetical. I'm curious to hear your answer. Is that
I'm going to cut you off and get in our last break here, Logan, because I know we might go long here. So just from our audience, you're tuned into Cigar Chat, broadcast around the world, heard on the Armed Forces Radio Network. We're here with our special guest, Steve Saka of Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. And this last segment is brought to us by who, Logan?
Our good friends at Drew Estate. The Drew Estate Big Fed Cigar Safari coming up March 15th through the 18th. Book your ticket. Don't be a poser. And download the app.
That's a great trip. You got to book it.
It is a wonderful trip. Yeah, I know. It'll be the year 3. So we'll see if we're doing it next year or the following year. But yeah, I mean, so here's my question, Saka. Pure hypothetical. Let's say you just say in 2017 there is a reprieve where basically you can do any project you want and there's no legal consequences or anything like that. What would be that one project that you're kind of alluding to, like the fun one, that you would do? Because I know you have an idea of a project you're like, oh my God, I wish I could do this thing. What would it be?
One of the things I'd like to do is when you're in the process of making blends, you're making so many of them. I mean, you're making a multitude of things. And I think it would be very interesting to show consumers kind of the march to a final blend. So where you would actually take a product, you're saying, listen, this is what I want to create. And actually, you know, during the course of making a serious product, it's not unusual for there to be anywhere from 10 to as many as 40 sample ligas made on the march from point A to point B. And I think it would be very interesting to do something where consumers got an opportunity to smoke those samples along the way. Now, oddly enough, it will end up being a commercial failure for the brand itself, because ultimately, as consumers smoke all the sample ligas leading up, they will peel off and they'll say, well, sample 37A was the best, and 42 is the best. No, I like 15 better. You know what I mean? So by the time you get to the end, there's going to be very few people that are going to say, wow, that was the best of the best. The only guy that's going to think it was the best of the best is me. I'm the only one that's thinking it was the best of the best. So from a commercial point of view, I don't think it's a good way to make a brand, but I think it would be a very interesting insight for consumers to have the opportunity to smoke all of those different things and also get the comments. Maybe they'd come in a little envelope so they wouldn't be predisposed from the moment that they're smoking them, but the comments as to what the maker thought of those cigars and why ultimately this wasn't a finished one, and what it lacks and what its strengths are, and what, just kind of a peek in the inside, and do it in a much more serial way where the consumers, again, this is a very geek kind of thing. So I don't know.
Like, you'd have to do like a 5-count sampler and pick like the top 5, and then you'd have the 5th best, the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, and then the 1st.
Yeah,
and then basically you show like why.
That way though, Logan, the difference between the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th are going to be so minor. I mean,
this is true.
I mean, it's not enough to show the progression of where you came from, because when you're in those final stages, you're into such little micro tweaks that I don't think that 90% of the consumers would be able to tell the 1, 2, and 3 cigars apart that were in that.
But that's the fun part of it. That would be funny to see and collect the feedback to see if people could tell. And it's almost more of a contest gamification thing. Like, kind of like how you sent us that envelope of the Sobermesa like over a year ago. And you're like, I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Do not open this envelope, but pick out the flavors on it, right? And something almost like that to see if people could pick up the differences.
See, if you had read those flavors before, you would be looking for them and you would probably identify them. And that's why it's very easy to predispose a tasting panel with notions about what a cigar is or isn't by just telling them what it is in advance. They come up often, they parrot your own thing. And I'll give you another example that's kind of, I'm going to get in trouble for disclosing this, but what the heck, I don't care. They can sue me. Obviously, we always wanted to have the executive team at Drew Estate feel as though they were involved in the blending process.
Right.
The truth was they weren't. So what we would end up doing ultimately in the end is there would be many times we would come down to where we knew what the final blend was going to be, but we would basically label them A, B, and C and give them the ability to taste the 3 final blends so they could get their 2 cents in. But A, B, and C were all identical cigars.
All the blends were identical. You just did a bunch of water. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's all.
Right. So, they got to, put in their 2 cents and ultimately like, you know what, I think you're right. B's the one. You know what I mean?
Well, I think if politics has shown anything, nothing ever gets done by committee. So, the more people you involve in the process, the less likely you are to come out with a good outcome in a timely fashion, I'm sure.
That's always been my opinion.
So, last time we caught up with you, of course, at the IPCPR, and for our audience, if you haven't checked out our IPCPR coverage, you got to check out our IPCPR coverage. I think our interview with Steve typically ends up being number 1 or number 2 interview for the entire show. And
beautiful.
Yeah. I think usually number 1 ends up being a pretty girl, and then number 2 ends up being you.
Or Logan doing something funny.
Or Logan doing something funny. But my question for you, Steve, because going into this IPCPR, and this is our 4th IPCPR, fifth IPCPR
Fourth.
logo? No, fourth.
Fifth.
Fifth.
Fourth or fifth,
Yes, you can't even remember anymore. What was your take on the energy and the sort of audience? Because when we came by your booth, booth is sort of a loose term because it was really some really comfortable couches and a cool pad where people could hang out. So you were packed all the time. But what was your feeling? What was your takeaway from the IPCPR from Las Vegas?
Yeah, I honestly don't know because I never physically left my booth in the 3.5 days. I made one trip out of my booth, 2 trips. One day I actually went to take a whiz, and so I went to the bathroom, and then on the very last day, there was a guy I promised to introduce to the international sales manager at Drew Estate. And so I spent no time out of our booth. So my IPCPR experience was limited to my little 20 by 30 foot world. So actually, you guys who get to roam the show floor, you actually have a better gist of it than I do. All I have is my area, and what I know is for us, we were undermanned. I brought an extra body. There were 4 of us, and it wasn't enough. I need to take 6 people to work the show. The problem is, you add 2 more people, that's another $8,000 to $10,000 in expenses. And next year, what if we're just all standing around, twiddling our thumbs, looking at one another? It'll just be a big waste. So it's always difficult to decide what you need staffing wise for the trade show. Never know what to expect. And I know that because we were undermanned, we missed about 40 or 45 sales at the show. Now, luckily, we were able to catch up after the show with the people that stopped by and we weren't able to service. But I have to wonder those are the ones we knew we missed. I wonder how many we missed and we didn't know we missed because people just didn't have the opportunity to talk to us because, we were just so inefficient.
Well, I like the space. I mean, the idea was cool. It was an open concept, no walls, lots of couches to sit and hang out with. And as a result, every time we swung by.
Big chairs. It's 3.5 days. I mean, it's craziness. You're going to stand on your feet and do the dog and pony for 3.5 days? Nah, it doesn't make any sense to me. And nobody at a trade show doesn't want a comfortable place to sit down. That and a bottle of water, the 2 highest premiums at any trade show.
That's true.
Followed by a bottle of scotch, preferably a Lagavulin 16 Distillers Edition.
We had that in the case too. So,
any final questions as we come down to our last couple minutes here, Logan?
Let me ask you. I mean, this is a question because I know, Steve, your philosophy is to create brands that last, right? I mean, that's what we've talked about a lot, right? So tell me what is I'll use a corporate word here. What's the measure of success or the KPI to say that a brand has been successful in the long run? Now, granted, it still sells a ton of cigars, is not an answer, but is it that, after 2 full years of production, the brand grows at 5% every year or 3%? What to you would be success for like Sobermesa, which launched not quite a year and a half, right, almost 2 years ago?
For me, what success is measured in reorders. Ultimately, what you want to see is the bulk of your retail accounts placing repeat orders over and over again for the product, because that means that consumers like it enough that they're willing to buy it more than once. And of course, you got to judge that based on the particular vendor, because some vendors specialize in offering the newest, and right, their consumer base, that's what they're geared towards buying. And as a result, you're not going to get that type of performance with them, where there's other retailers whose businesses are based on the continual repeatable, what we call turns. So for me, what I want to see is a brand continue to turn. And because, that first order is very easy and the second order is very easy, it gets much more difficult once you get to the third order. And then ultimately what you're hoping to see is the 15th order and the 20th order, as you go through over time. So what you really want to see is each retail account is different. I mean, the average retailer in the United States does basically 3 turns a year on most products. Okay. 3 or 4. Yeah. There are some that only do 2 or 1. And to me, they're not managing their inventory very well if they're only doing that. You get other retailers. I mean, we have some retailers that buy from us every single month. I don't know that that's even the most efficient either, because it seems like they spend a lot of time reordering and paying more in shipping and handling.
Shipping,
Right.
right.
So, but you would like to see a retailer, order on a continual basis, every 60 to 90 days or so on average. And I think that that's a mark for success. I think the other thing that is, it's kind of anecdotal, but you want to see that consumers are still engaged with the brand. You want to see that, here it is a year later, and they're still actually willing to post pictures of it on Facebook and Instagram, because, they could choose to take pictures of anything. So the fact that they go out of the way to take a picture of yours, even though it isn't a cigar that's brand new, because it's always easy to show off the shiny new toy, that's a very good anecdotal indicator that a brand is starting to get some sort of market penetration. Another thing that you look for is where you start to get consumers that are, they may not like everything in your portfolio, but they become kind of loyal to your product lines where, well, you know what, no matter what this guy makes, I'm always going to be willing to give it a try, because he's made some very interesting things. It's always something different and unique. And so that's a way that you can look at it from a company-wide perspective. And, because you get to some companies and you've been burned, release after release after release, and you're kind of like, you know what, I'm done with that. I've had it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I don't want to try another one. This may be the greatest cigar you ever made. It may be the best priced cigar ever made for the moment I'm getting, but I've smoked 22 other things that company's made, and overall my experiences have been less favorable than favorable. And so you want to see if you can maintain that kind of that equity with the consumer, that good faith equity, that they're always willing to give you a chance to see if you can deliver something that's going to suit their palate. One of the things that's a big misconception in our business is people think these brands are much, much larger than they really are. There's very few brands that do more than $1 million in sales at a wholesale level a year.
Are you saying brand as in Sobermesa or brand as in Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust?
As in Sobermesa. Okay. There's a lot of companies the smaller companies aren't doing they're not doing the numbers that people think they're doing. The perception out there is that these companies are much bigger than they really, really are. I can tell you, we didn't cross the $1 million threshold with Liga Privada until we got past year 3. That's with Drew Estate. That's with a tremendous sales force. That's with a product when it was, those cigars in those first 3 years were unbelievably cherry. So, it's not as easy a road to hoe as some people perceive it to be. So you are looking to cross that $1 million mark, because once you cross that $1 million mark for one individual brand, that's a pretty good milestone to hit. And it's not an easy task to do. I've actually done it with Sobermesa already. I haven't done it with Querida yet. We'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. But ultimately, in the end, what you are hoping is to see continued sales. In a company like my company, I would expect to see much more exponential style of growth because I'm so much smaller. When you're a company the size of Davidoff and Altadis and General and Swisher, you're then now into these incremental numbers of where you're saying, hey, if I can get 3%, 3.5% growth, that's pretty damn impressive. Yeah. Because what you have is the cigar market itself has not really grown much over the last 10 years. The number of units imported and sold in the United States has pretty much ranged right around the 315 to 325 million per year, pretty consistently for the last decade, with the exception being 2008, or was it 2001? When did things fall apart? Yeah, it was end of 2008 into 2009.
2009. Yep.
Right. That year was a down year. But the economy started to, people started to collect their senses, and things came right back to where they were. So we are dealing with a relatively fixed pie scenario. So everything that is selling well today means that something else is not selling as well.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're not in a booming consumer market where we're getting more consumers. So, and I don't think we'll really, like, it's hard to say when something will boom or not boom. I think the next most likely influx of consumers would be when the embargo ends. I think when the embargo ends, we will then see a much greater demand and interest in our particular segment. And I think we will then see a shift in the numbers. But I think pretty much right now, I think it's a pretty stable state kind of market. And I don't see a tremendous shift. So that means that every cigar I sell, it means somebody else isn't selling a cigar. That's what it means.
Right.
And that brings us to the end of our Armed Forces Radio Network segment. We'll circle back on that and more in our After Dark segment. Steve, I want to take a moment and thank you very much for being on Cigar Chat. It's been a little while. It's been a hot minute since we had you last on Cigar Chat, and we appreciate you being on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I always enjoy it.
And I want to thank all our Armed Forces Radio Network listeners wherever you're stationed in the world. Hope you have a chance to stay warm, be bored, and listen to our 58 minutes of Cigar Chat. We'll be back next week at our regular scheduled time of 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. I, of course, will be back on Wednesday with sharing our pairings with Trip. We'll be doing some stouts and maybe a meat Querida. You never know. You never know. Check that out on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. And as Rob used to say, have yourself a great weekend.
And we're fucking back. So now you can say whatever you want, Saka.
We, of course, we are still live and being broadcast on podcasts, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, but who cares?
I think I kept my potty mouth in check there.
That was, yeah, you. I know Logan was on the edge of dropping a couple bombs there, but he refrained as well.
Almost.
Yeah, couple inches there.
You know, it's difficult. I grew up. I was an enlisted squid. So, I mean, in the formative years of my vocabulary, it was a kind of a rough area to come out of. So
F-bombs come like water.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I love my fucking mother, you know?
So getting back to the industry discussion there, because we were talking about the market and the progress. Do you think? I mean, not to
about these type of discussions. I always wonder if we're just being a little bit too. I mean, don't they get bored to death of this type of discussions?
You know, they don't. This is our 235th episode, and they're still tuning in.
You would think so.
You would think so, but no. So,
but I mean, these industry kind of price point market strategies and all of this kind of stuff.
Honestly, with you, it's a little bit different because, I'm going to say something really bad. Most of the guests we have couldn't have an intelligent conversation about that. A lot of it is, hey, man, I got the greatest fucking cigar on the face of the It's basically the newest and greatest conversation, right? So when we have a guest like you that's, intelligent, they can actually have those talks, people actually really gravitate towards those shows because most consumers don't get that type of insight. And not from someone like you, right? Like, I might say something very similar to what you said, but it's fucking Logan. What the fuck does Logan know? But when someone comes on that's in the industry, kind of a level of, I guess, real, I guess. But yeah, no, people don't get bored. People actually really like those shows.
I had the benefit of a lot of experience. I had the benefit of working for Lou Rothman, at JR Cigar. So that was a very large cigar retailer and hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And then I had the benefit of being at Drew Estate, running Drew Estate. So I've had the lucky circumstances to be in positions where, I had the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of things that most people in our industry don't have that opportunity.
What do they say? The difference between luck and fortune is being prepared for those opportunities when they make themselves available?
What's weird about that too is people often ask me, but when I think back on it, there was never like any big magical moment that led to something. It was always some little stupid thing. You know what I mean? It was never, there was never any grand master plan. It's really kind of weird how life works sometimes.
Just point your feet down the river.
Well, I mean, look, I got my job at JR Cigar having a conversation about hot dogs. I ended up being with Jonathan because I ended up working on a project with John where he made these Mayorga coffee infused cigars that were the worst cigars ever. He literally delivered us just hundreds of thousands of unsmokable sticks. They were rock hard.
What was the name of it?
was Mayorga coffee infused. It was in a tin, and it was
I don't think I've ever even heard of these.
well, it was basically a tin of swizzle sticks because that's literally the only thing you could use them for because they were unsmokable. They were a disaster. I mean, it was just terrible. And so, it's kind of weird how things work out sometimes.
So, I mean, not to get political here, but I'm gonna ask a question in the political realm. So, obviously, there's a major change of politics in the United States. I'm a Canadian, so we have to keep our eye on this pretty closely. But obviously, with the House, the Senate, and the executive all changing hands this time around, I mean, obviously, no one's got a crystal ball. We can all remain hopeful. Do you think that's going to be positive for the cigar industry over the next 12 to 18 months?
Oh, God. I wish I could say yes, but I don't think so. I think more so. Look, there are people that are being put into. First off, President-elect Trump is a teetotaler, so he's not pro-cigar, he's not pro-alcohol, he's not pro. So you don't have that direct impact. It does turn out that Mike Pence, the VP, he was one of the original co-sponsors of the exemption bill. It also turns out that the person he put in charge of HHS is also a pro-cigar, handmade cigars, and he was also on the sponsorship side of that bill.
Yeah, he was on the original 2007, and then the follow-up bill, I think, as a co-sponsor.
But he was for the exemption for handmade cigars.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, Rudy Giuliani being a close. Whether he becomes a cabinet member or not, he's definitely a close advisor to President-elect Trump, and he's got a very large personal investment in this interest about handmade cigars. So we have three key people that are at the top that you would think things would be favorable for us. I think that there are so many big ticket issues that the government has to deal with. Surprised if we get more than a moment's time for them to really think that it's something to spend political capital on to help us out. I think that now that the rules have been promulgated, I think it's more likely that they're going to stay in place. I think the question is going to be how are they actually executed, and ultimately what becomes of how they're enacted. It always comes down to the details. It just depends on what they require for the HPHC testing, what they ultimately require for the substantial equivalency applications. They're not banning new products. They're just saying that they have to be approved prior to. So if they process the substantial equivalency applications and there aren't some onerous HPHC testing costs, and maybe it's nothing more than a 4 to 6 month rubber red stamp in order to get something new into the marketplace, then essentially it will be business as usual. Now, regretfully, some things aren't going to go away. User fees are kicking in. They're kicking in at the end of this month for the first quarter. So all consumers are going to see a price increase right off the bat. Most have already seen the price increases. They haven't from my company because I was too dumb to understand the way the rules were written. I thought the user fees were to kick in October. What they meant was October of fiscal year 2017, which is actually October 2016. So I'm going to end up having to promulgate a price increase in January to cover those expenses. Aren't a big expense. I mean, my initial calculations, look, they're going to vary because they're going to back bill you for whatever you're short. But my initial calculations works out to, for me, about only 3 cents a unit. So that isn't where the cost is in the compliance issues. The amount of time that I've been spending reading, rereading, engaging attorneys to try to understand what I'm supposed to do is just absurd for a company of my size. And those costs have to be expressed somewhere. Large companies, it's a huge advantage. When you have a company, you're doing $80 million a year in sales, their legal advice costs the same as my legal advice when I'm doing under $2 million in sales. You know what I mean? So I've got to express that across $2 million in sales, and they've got to express that across $80 million in sales. So they have a huge competitive advantage to amortize those costs across their product lines. And that makes it much more difficult for us. But I think I mean, but if it comes down to it's product registrations, it's filing paperwork, it's some increased costs, it's a matter of putting ugly warning labels on the boxes, then the sky won't fall. You know, but until we actually see how this goes down, like right now, in fact, I have a consultation tomorrow with another compliance attorney. I still cannot get a straight answer on whether you must have your CTP industry account manager established prior to December 31st, or must you only have completed the furls registration and product registration. Maybe Logan knows the answer to that. The problem is I've got answers on that question that I don't know. And as a guy that's in the business, what I want to do is I just want to do things legit. You know, I don't want to just end up putting in some sort of legal jeopardy down the road. You know, and so, you know, for me, I'm still trying to sort things out. And I have not submitted my furls registration yet. I'm probably going to do so at the end of next week. Have you done yours yet, Logan?
Yep.
You've
it'll
done
be
it?
end of this or end of this or early next.
Have you established a CTP portal account yet?
Not yet, no.
Right. And I mean, when I read the websites and I look at the webinars, it doesn't appear that you have to have this before.
I don't think you have to. I mean, not giving you legal advice or anything, but yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to. But like, I've consulted a couple of different attorneys and I get two different answers. It's ridiculous.
That's my dilemma. And that's why tomorrow I'm speaking to a third complaint. And you know, and therein lies the problem. And you know, I have personally tried to reach out to the FDA as now on 14 occasions, and I've yet to get one single response, either email or to my phone calls. So it's not that I'm not trying to comply. I really genuinely am. In fact, I'm now to the point now that I'm actually starting to log the phone calls and the voice messages because I'm thinking, gosh, maybe a year from now, I'm actually going to have to go to court and say, look, I tried to talk to you guys. You know what I mean? Here's a copy of all the emails. I had one email that I had questions from 3 months ago that I literally sent them every week for 10 weeks straight. And all I got was the automated response thanking me for my questions.
Really? Oh, man.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, you know, here I am. Because I'll tell you, like, one of the things that's very weird in the way the FDA regulations are set up is I actually don't exist. In the way they parties, you have foreign manufacturers, you have domestic manufacturers, and you have importers. Well, I'm obviously not a foreign manufacturer because I don't own a factory in a foreign country. Okay, I'm not a domestic manufacturer because I don't actually physically make anything in the United States. And I'm not legally classified as an importer because to be legally an importer, you actually have to hold a TTB license. I don't personally hold the TTB license. I actually import my cigars through Oliva Tobacco Company, and they actually handle all the TTB stuff. And I end up just basically paying them excise taxes that they ended up remitting on my behalf, and then I pay them a slight markup for this for me. So there's actually no place that I'm a legal entity under the way the regulations are to actually register anything. But ultimately, I am the one that's responsible to register. So what's happened is I think most people have made the decision that that are like myself, and probably like Logan is, he's probably going to register as a domestic manufacturer. Okay? But when you read domestic manufacturer, the description, neither him nor I actually really fit for it. But what's the answer? Well, because I'm not one of the three, because, you know, the way I'm written, if you're not one of the three, you're not required to register. Well, if you don't register, then there'll be no way to submit your ingredient list in the end. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like...
It's so backwards. Like, it's designed for you to fail. That's the thing, is it's designed for you and I and people who aren't importers or someone who has a factory. It's designed for you to fail. I mean, and that's what it comes down to, right? Like, it's like, at the end of the day, right? They say, oh, yeah, I remember the FDA thing, like one of the webinars, they're like, yeah, we want to help you succeed. We're going to give small businesses these extra time. We want you guys to succeed. No, absolutely not. Like, they want to make it as complicated as humanly possible, where we all will fail, and they can come back and say, hey, Steve, hey, thanks for doing this. Oh, you actually weren't supposed to register, so you missed this window, or whatever crazy nonsense it is, right? Like, and that's the whole point. It's designed to fail, so you can't win. It's like a bad analogy, but it's like when we were giving, like, back in the 1800s or early 1900s, we were giving people citizenship tests, and they were designed, like, they were so impossible that people failed. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't pass them, right? So it's the exact same thing. Freaking bananas.
And the thing is, here's the question I don't know. Were they designed to make us fail, or is it just an expression of the bureaucracy of such a large government trying to regulate an industry that they have absolutely no comprehension of?
It's both. I mean, I think it's a bit of both. Like, I think the bureaucracy is designed to make you fail at the end of the day, right?
I think that's a good. Sorry, I was just going to quickly say, I think that's a great example of Hanlon's razor, and Hanlon's razor says, never attribute to malice that which can adequately explain by stupidity or ignorance, and I think that probably applies.
When August 8th came in, it required the FDA to inspect all imports, okay? In order for CPB, Customs and Border Patrol, the customs people, to release your product, it now required an FDA inspector to sign off on it. It was a new step. And the customs inspectors, what were they inspecting for? Because there were no standards. They didn't make any list of the products that were pre-August 8th, post-August. No idea. All that the customs people knew is, look, we can't release it until the FDA signs off on it. So now you have all these FDA inspectors that are in these local markets who, they inspect meat that's coming in. They inspect fruit that's coming in. And now they have to inspect cigars that are coming in. But they know that they have to inspect and certify it, but they don't know what they're inspecting or certifying for. So when my first shipment came in, and I'm unlike everyone else, most people import through Miami, my goods are actually shipped to Boston. I'm the only idiot on the planet that's importing handmade cigars into Boston. Yes. So I'm in Boston, and my goods sat at customs for 10 days waiting for the FDA inspector. And I got very lucky. My FDA inspector actually took the time to write me a letter and mail it to me telling me, listen, I know your goods are waiting to be inspected, but I have no clue what I'm supposed to be inspecting for, and I'm waiting for guidance from Washington to tell me what I'm supposed to do. I just want you to know that I know it's here and I'm not ignoring you. I'm trying to get the answers so I can do my job. And she put her name on it and her email address and her phone number, and I was able to call her up and talk to her, and I said, listen, supposed to do either. Nobody knows, but I know that they went through this in Miami just last week. So would you mind if I put you in touch with the FDA inspectors in Miami through my broker, who also imports goods to Miami, so that you can talk to those FDA inspectors, and maybe they can tell you what they're doing, and maybe that will help you? And she said, absolutely. Within 2 hours, she had her answer, and she released my goods. So she wasn't trying to be difficult. She just knew that she had to do something, but she didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of people that are in these jobs that, GS whatever, 17s, GS 8s. I don't know what level you are as an FDA inspector, but I don't think that they're doing it with malice. I think that in a lot of cases, they just don't really have a clue. And I have the same feeling that the reason I'm not getting answers to my questions is because they don't know how to answer them. The problem I have is I have deadlines that are written in the code that I need to respond to. And by me not getting the answers, I don't know that what I'm doing is actually correct.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think the whole, I mean, it's a classic cart and the horse situation where you implement regulation, you implement procedures without actually having the processes to support them. And I mean, the cigar industry as an industry, other industries that are regulated is a very, very small drop in the bucket, but still faces the same problems if you can't have these processes in place before you put in this regulation. Then 10,000 people are running around with their chickens with their heads cut off, not knowing what's going on, both on the industry side and on the regulation side, which is ridiculous.
Don't we have anything better to talk about? Because this is
we definitely have. Let's talk football, Steve. Now
really?
I know Logan's not a football guy. I'm a football guy. I know I'm an NFL guy in Canada, so I'm a bit of an odd duck. But I look forward to football. This is football season. We're getting down to it. Is your team the Patriots? You're in New Hampshire, so I'm assuming it's got to be the Patriots.
It's the Patriots.
The Patriots.
The
So
evil empire.
the evil empire. Yeah. Well, obviously Jets and Patriots, long history. I have nothing to say. What can I say? My team sucks. We need a rebuilding year for a rebuilding year. It's just an embarrassment. I'm not wearing my jersey for good reason tonight.
On your team, it's not. You have a lot of standout players that are in place. I mean, obviously you have a problem with the quarterback that hasn't, and part of it's just been so unsettled. But the Jets should not be a 3-9 team. It's ridiculous that they're 3-9. I mean, I didn't think the Jets were going to win the AFC East, but I mean, coming off last season, I thought they would improve this season. I thought they'd be where the Dolphins are sitting now. I did not think they would be where they are sitting now.
Yeah, whenever I see the performance with that kind of talent on a team, I always look at the top and work my way down. I don't look at the bottom and work my way up. So I say, if you've got talent and they're not performing or your team isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing, then start with your general manager and work your way down on that team.
Yeah, there's definitely something. There's something amiss there, and it's not that I think Bowles is a bad coach either. I don't know what's wrong with the Jets. But I do know that there's something. And Monday night game was just – it was embarrassing.
It was embarrassing.
They had no heart. They had no fight in them at all. I mean, it's –
Revis was giving, 10, 15 yards off of his coverage. It was like, no offense, I could have tackled better than Revis did, and I'm not an NFL player.
Why has Revis so fallen off the map? How did he go from being such a standout player to so, I don't even want him.
There was actually a really interesting NFL analyst who had he talked about how players perform after major surgery, and I guess they're saying that some of that could be attributed to his hand surgery. But I mean, this is a guy who's supposed to be a competitor, right? And the thing about competitors, like Brandon Marshall actually just came out famously and said, they said, how'd you feel after your 2014 game where you had 3 touchdowns in one game? He says, honestly, I don't remember. I had a high ankle sprain, and I was completely high on painkillers because that's what I needed to get through the game. And it's like, on one hand, it's you're like, wow, that really shouldn't happen. But on the other hand, you go, there's a guy who was in so much pain with a high ankle sprain that he had to completely dope up, and he still made 3 touchdowns. These guys are competitors at heart. I mean, they're getting paid millions of dollars, but they're competitors. These guys want to win. So when you see a guy not perform, it's hard for me to not question his heart.
Yeah, it's kind of where I'm at with the Jets. I don't know. I just know that I know it's just been an ultimately disappointing season, which for me, obviously, as a Pats fan, it's a good thing. It's one less competitor to have to worry about. But I thought they were going to be a much better team this year. I really did.
So looking at the big picture of the NFL, and not to bore Logan too much, what do you think? Well, I mean, obviously we kind of know where the playoff picture is going now.
Yeah, I think, in the AFC, I think the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Chiefs are my top. I think the Chiefs are the ones that are the scariest. They're just so well balanced. I think the Raiders, I think the defense is – I don't think their 10-2 is really – I think their defense doesn't really warrant them to be 10-2, and I don't know that they're going to be able to scrap their way through the playoffs. The Chiefs are a much more dangerous team, and the Ravens are a pretty dangerous team, even though they're 7-5. They're hitting their stride at just the right time. So for me, that's kind of the 4 teams that I'm focused on in the AFC. In the NFC, I keep waiting for the Cowboys to fall apart, but it doesn't seem to happen. I mean, the last game, even though they won, it was probably their worst game. They weren't that good. I think we'll see a lot in this upcoming week versus the Giants. See how that plays out. But I think, in the NFC, it's the Cowboys, the Seahawks, and I think the Lions are really, really strong. I think Stafford's just got laser focus. And I got to tell you, the last couple games I've watched the Buccaneers. I mean, I know it should be the Falcons to win there in the NFC South, but the Buccaneers they're a scary, scary team right now. So that's kind of where I am on the NFC side.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I think the Lions started out having a really tough schedule at the beginning of the year, and I remember seeing some stat that said, at the beginning of the year they were essentially they had 4 games where the differential between those 4 games would have been measured by a single touchdown
Yeah.
because the games were that close.
No, the Lions have bet in almost every game this season. And the Lions are legit, and Stafford's going to get a heck of a payday next year.
Well, I'm a Cowboys fan before I was a Jets fan, and I can tell you that as a Cowboys fan, my breath is on hold because the moment the Cowboys hit the playoffs, that's usually when the wheels come right off the bus. Is usually the first game they play in the playoffs, and they just self-destruct.
Is that a Tony Romo phenomenon, or is that a Dallas Cowboy phenomenon?
Actually, that's a fair point. It's usually a Tony Romo. So with Zach at the helm, maybe this is the year where they go deep.
But speaking of Tony Romo, I wouldn't be surprised to see him playing for the Jets next year.
Why would you wish that upon me?
You got a
come
team.
on.
You're not like Jacksonville or the Browns or these other teams that are really like building from the ground up. I mean, the Jets they got a roster that they should do something these next couple of years. So I mean, having look, you don't have to have the world's greatest quarterback. I mean, look, me and my friends, we always put Alex Smith as our judge. Alex Smith is our midpoint quarterback where we say better or worse than Alex Smith.
Yeah.
Alex Smith is a very consistent, efficient quarterback that never screws your team over, manages to get enough done to win games, doesn't give turnovers easily. You know what I mean? And I mean, he can propel you to actually winning a Super Bowl, if the rest of the team can play at that level. I mean, look, the Broncos, Peyton Manning certainly didn't have a good year last year by any stretch of the imagination, but yet the rest of the team around Peyton was able to carry him through to get that final Super Bowl ring. You know what I mean? So, and Tony Romo in the right scenario, I think he could be a quarterback that could take you, to the promised land.
I think Tony needs to retire before he ends up in a wheelchair from the age of 52 on for the rest of his life, because I think that man has become the man of class.
Right now.
Say again?
That's the way I feel about Gronkowski right now.
Oh man, I mean, as much as I hate on the Patriots, it's terrible to see a guy who's such a competitor and such an athlete go through stuff like that, go through injuries like that. I mean, you never wish that on especially on your your opponent.
He's been injury prone from college. He was having serious back problems.
It's a shame.
So, all right, let's talk about something else. So Logan, I can hear him snoring in the background.
Yeah, what do you got for us, Logan? now that you've listened to our NFL debacle for 15 minutes.
I'm so bored.
Do we tire you?
You completely wore me out. So what's your next travel date, Saka?
My next.
Where are you going next? What are you doing for the holidays?
Holidays, I'm spending them at home. I have a couple of events. I'm doing an event at State College coming up at the end of next week, and I'm going to end up also going to Rocky Cigars in Syracuse the Monday before Christmas. And then my travels are kind of light between now and the end of the year, and then pretty much from January until the IPCPR, pretty much nonstop. A lot of time in Nika, and a lot of time on the road, helping to support the brands and meet more consumers.
So. Well, maybe we'll run into you in Nika when we're down there March 15th to the 18th. That'd be kind of fun.
March 15th to the 18th. You just might, actually. It's going to be close because it's, there's March 15th to the 18th. Yeah, that's actually very plausible, looking at my current calendar.
Nice. There you go. That's as close as plans get as far as Nika goes, because everything's in flux the moment you land.
So you ended up getting those cigars?
I did, and I think that's, like I said, I think you got the magic pixie dust on that package, because Logan always talks about sending packages up to me is like putting them on the back of a sled and hoping for the best usually.
That's pretty much right, man.
And I tell you
got serious customs going on in Canada.
We got serious customs.
It's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, what's funny is, I mean, hopefully no CBSA are tuned into this show, but what's funny is, a guy will get through like 3 boxes of cigars, which, normally if you order 3 boxes of cigars in Canada as a consumer and you don't declare them, that's a pretty big risk because first of all, it's a large package, which is kind of where they got their eyes on, and second of all, it's pretty obvious to tell when that goes through a scanner what that is. And what's funny is the number of times where it's been, a 3 or 4 cigar box package gets through no problem, and a guy has a 5-pack sampler, and the 5-pack sampler's nailed. And of course, when you're nailed, there's no grace. So I think typically in a 5-pack package, you can expect to bill somewhere in the neighborhood of $250.
Woo!
Yeah, well, this may be our future, Logan. Can you imagine?
I've figured that if that does happen, I've watched the movie Blow enough times. I'm gonna go buy myself a single-engine Cessna, and I'm just gonna rip out the back seat, Saka, fill it up with cigars, land somewhere in Mexico, and then just fly right into the airfield next to my house and just pray to God I don't go to jail.
Yeah, see, I'm way too buttoned up for that. I don't need the grief. I'd rather just I'm going to keep smoking cigars. The question is,
I'm not going to stop.
Right. The question is whether I'll keep selling cigars is going to be the question. Will I keep making cigars?
This is true.
For other people? But no, it's crazy. One of the things I don't know most of your listeners are probably U.S., right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, about 85%, 83%. Pardon me.
You could pretty much, as a rule of thumb, take whatever price those cigars are sold into the international markets at, and by the time they hit the retail register, the lowest multiplier is about 3.2, all the way up to 9 times that purchase price for the retailer.
Yep.
To the retail counter is what it ends up being. So it's crazy. And the worst part about it is it isn't like the retailers are getting rich either. I mean, in countries like Spain, they're only allowed to mark those products up 8%. 8%. In the Netherlands, the maximum markup allowed is 32%. So it isn't even like they're making the lion's share of the money. It's entirely the distribution chains and the governments that are making those prices so crazy. It's not the manufacturer, and it's certainly not the retailers. It's all the middlemen that are piggies at the trough. And as a result, you take a cigar we regularly smoke for $8 to $10 in the United States, and poor guys in Canada are paying $20 to $25 all the time for that same product.
Yeah, I can tell you as a Canadian retailer, Sobermesa would land on the shelf. The sale price on the shelf here would be roughly between $39 and $41.
Yeah, I mean, that's and the problem with that is, luckily here in the United States, it's a relatively affordable luxury. It costs you what a couple beers at the end of the day cost you. You can actually relax and enjoy it. But if you're now talking $40 to smoke one, a ballpark where you got to be a super swell in order to be able to afford to enjoy a handmade cigar. And that's the reason why sales are so small internationally when compared to U.S. domestic sales. It's just because people around the world just simply can't afford it.
Yeah, I do get a pretty good chuckle if I'm down in Chicago or if I'm in Denver and, I go into a shop and the guy says, where are you from? And he says, well, our taxes here are a little on the high side. And I just kind of chuckle and go, you know what? Even if your taxes are more than $1 per cigar, to me, that's nothing. Like, I don't even consider that a tax. That's like sales tax to me.
But what cigars have you guys smoked recently that you've been impressed by?
Oh, the Cray and the green, the color project stuff. Saka,
I like the Crayola project. I think Saka should have been in charge of the naming. Crayola project would have been a much better name.
That's a shame. And actually, that was one of the options. But then I was like, man, I don't want to get sued by the Crayola Corporation or whoever makes crayons, basically.
Yeah,
what have I smoked? What would I make? What if I smoked recently that was really good? I have smoked a Sobermesa short Churchill, not good Rodrigo, but that is a very, very good cigar.
My stuff's fantastic. I got stuff.
That's a really good cigar. What else have I smoked recently that's been really good?
I smoked Nick's Tabernacle in the Lancero. I know a lot of people were hot on
I smoked that
Toro.
yesterday.
People were hot on the Toro.
The Toro is swell.
The Toro is good. It's balanced, and I think that's maybe where a lot of smokers like the balance. For me, I like the Lancero because the Lancero...
It's dirty.
It's dirty. It's like I called it a pepper bowl that you just kind of strap your hand into and let it rock you around for about an hour and 45. And I enjoy it.
Tabernacles. I find them they're pretty. The ones I've smoked have been pretty full body.
Yeah, well, very much so.
They are.
Yeah.
You said balanced. I haven't had the balanced experience personally yet. I've had.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's balanced in the word of balance, but balanced in compared to the other Batolas.
Yeah,
the Lancero.
Yeah, compared to the Lancero, I mean, the Lancero is like a pepper bomb, goes off in your mouth and doesn't stop until you cry uncle at the end, and the Toro doesn't really hit you like that.
See, to me, I find the experience of smoking a Tabernacle similar to smoking a Neanderthal in a lot of ways.
Yep, I can see that. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, the experience, yes. I would say the nicotine on the Neanderthal for me is much stronger. Like I can definitely, I sometimes can get a little bit of a buzz off of a Neanderthal. Like I can feel it. I don't off a Tabernacle.
I feel like the Neanderthal sneaks up in you a little bit more because it doesn't have that big Lajero pepper bomb kick at the very start, so it doesn't really. You don't get a hint that it's a strong cigar till you're about an inch in, and by then it's too late.
I kind of compare it to when you were drinking beer in high school and you were sitting in a lawn chair, like, out in the middle of a grass field where I grew up, and you drink like 4 or 5 beers and you're like, man, I'm not drunk at all. And then you stand up and you're like, oh, fuck, what just happened to me? That's kind of like the Neanderthal. But I'm trying to think. I've smoked recently. I smoked the Caldwell's
Limited edition?
Eastern Standard.
Yeah.
Well, I smoked the La Barba limited edition, and I love you, Tony. You're a good friend, but kind of a swing and a miss on that deal. I smoked 3 of them. The construction was just fucking horrific, and it just burned like shit, tasted like shit. Smoked the new Caldwell Midnight Express, which is just kind of a Maduro. Well, it's an Ataparaca, I believe, wrapper, but basically over the Eastern Standard Connecticut. It was okay. Wasn't anything to write home about. I'm trying to think. I smoked the new Ohana Pulse and Pulse Maduro.
Has the one that Drew Estates manufactured for Caldwell been released to general?
Yolo Kings? No, I don't think it's.
I ordered like a shit ton of it. I haven't seen it unless they're just trickling the shit out. But no, I haven't seen it.
I've smoked a release sample, but I haven't seen any in the wild.
So I don't understand that. How can you have a release sample and still not have any cigars? I mean, was it done or was it not done? Doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know. Let me think. What else have I smoked?
I would think that product probably has. I haven't smoked any, so I don't have any opinions about it. But just as a general comment, I would think it probably has the highest likelihood of being one of the more consistent Caldwell products if it's being manufactured by Drew Estate.
Well, it's actually, which is kind of the same thing, sort of.
Is it actually being made at Hoya? I don't know that it is.
Yeah,
made at Hoya.
Pretty sure it's made at Hoya.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I don't know if that was supposed to be shared publicly, but yes, it is made at Hoya.
I don't think the ones at the trade show were made at Hoya.
I don't know about all that. I just know that I asked specifically one person at Drew Estate, and who knows, and basically they're like, yeah, we just don't have the capacity. It's all made at Hoya.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know. You know what I smoked? And, like, Saka, I'm sure you haven't smoked this, but if you find it, I think you would actually really appreciate this cigar, is Emilio. They did the new release from Black Label. It was called the Cavatina. It was fucking wonderful. It's fucking amazing.
Okay. You know what I smoked? I smoked John Huber's new what is it?
La Creme or the Waves?
The La Creme.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really nice, balanced, intricate smoke. It's not if you're a strength junkie, a pepper junkie, don't bother.
No.
But if you like that flavorful, balanced kind of thing, I mean, I think that was a really nice cigar. I thought it was really, really well made, and it was a real pleasurable smoke. It was very relaxing to smoke that cigar.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of the of the Jericho Hill, but if you took the Jericho Hill and brought the strength down and then made everything a lot more nuanced. So
Right.
I think it's a lot more like, because the Jericho Hill was definitely on the stronger side of things, and I mean I like that too. But for me, it was I think going to be a lot more approachable in the marketplace for a lot more smokers don't smoke in the medium plus to full range.
I wouldn't compare it to the Jericho Hill. I compare it to when he first released Four Kicks.
Oh yeah,
Because
okay.
it's a very, like you said, a very nuanced cigar, and that's a cigar like the Four Kicks. I'll go back to it, and I won't smoke one for like 3 or 4 months, and I'll smoke one, and if I'm just working during the day and I smoke, and I'm like, it's average. But if it's like I'm trying to relax and I actually pay attention to it, it's one of those cigars you got to really pay attention to appreciate. And I feel like it's kind of like the La Creme, like a lot can get lost in translation unless you're kind of paying attention to it. But I thought it was good. I thought it was one of the best cigars John's done in a while.
Yeah, I enjoyed that cigar, the Crab. I thought it was nice, and in fact, it's actually on my box buy list. So, well, I like when I'm doing when I go around to stores, I'm doing my events. I always like to buy something. So, some retailer out there in the near future, I'll end up buying a box of La Creme from. So.
I really liked Fred Rui's new martial law, the Nomad martial law.
Don't even say it. No.
No, man, it was your palate's jacked. I think that was
Dude, first of all, my palate is amazing. I don't like everything like everyone. Like,
you don't
I'll
like
tell you
anything. There's a difference between not liking everything and not liking anything. And you like.
I can appreciate stuff, but there's a difference between appreciating it
I don't know
and
if you
liking
can.
it.
Sometimes you have the
I don't
palate of
know.
a donkey. I'm just saying.
I don't know, dude. That's been pretty spot on.
But the martial law was, to me, because I think is the best blend he's done since the C276. And I think the C276 was great for the smokers who live in the medium full to full range, which is a very small segment of a very small market. And the martial law is medium, maybe just slightly over medium, but again, more nuanced. The flavors are a lot more balanced out than the C276. I thought it was a fantastic cigar. I bought a box, so.
Well, that's a big. When you buy a box, that's definitely saying something.
Yeah, if you spend money on it, it's a different.
Well,
it's a
I mean,
different thing.
one of you know what, one of the things, and this would be interesting. Cat apparently is destroying my Scotch bottles. That's fantastic. Here's a question for you, Steve, because there's been a lot of discussion about box count sizes, and I think one of the things I liked about the martial law is it came in a 12-count box. Now, pain in the ass from the manufacturing perspective, because you're still paying the same cost per box.
It's a cost issue.
Right.
It comes down. The problem that you have is, and look, I had this argument internally with Sobermesa. If I put it in a half-size box, it essentially makes every cigar in the box physically cost me about a quarter more. And if it costs me a quarter extra, and I mark it up a little bit, so I charge 35 cents extra, it then means the retailer ends up charging 70 cents more. So by putting in half the size box, it makes every single cigar 70 cents more to the consumer. And that's, and you have to say to yourself, well, now I've taken a $12 cigar and I've now made it into a $13 cigar. And so it's always a catch-22. Oddly enough, though, I'm starting to I actually imported Sobermesa in 13-count boxes prior to the deadline because I was thinking about changing the whole line to go in smaller boxes. And the reason why I was thinking about that was for 2 reasons. One, it would make it easier to sell at an event because it's much more palatable to the consumer to be able to make an entire box purchase when he could walk out the door for $150 rather than having to walk out the door for $290. And the other thing, too, is a lot of small brick and mortars, they're just broke. They have no money. Yep. So when you give it to them in a 13-count box, it lets them fill up their shelves for half the investment. You know what I mean? It makes it look like they have more in the store than what they really have in the store. So for them, it gives them a way to fill their shelves in a way that it used to be the retailers would complain that boxes were too wide, they took too much space, and some of them still complain. But I think more of them have become much more cash flow conscientious over the last 2 years. And I think they're starting to look at those smaller boxes and say, wow, I can actually make my store look like it's completely full with having half the amount of money in inventory on the shelves. So, but the problem is, somewhere along the line, somebody ends up having to pay for those smaller box counts. And regretfully, at the end of the chain, the consumer is the one that ends up paying the tab for it.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, it's true. I mean, like, that's why whenever I did the color project stuff, it's like having a box. I mean, there's no doubt that boxes are sexy in a brick and mortar. I get it. But I just wish more, because I've got boxes. You look at my ceiling, I got boxes everywhere. I burn boxes in my fire pit outside. Like, I'm awash in boxes here. And like, I just love the 10 count or the 5 count bundles with just a sticker on them, and just makes it easy. But nobody does it. And that's the thing. I am still just shocked that like a lot of retail or a lot of manufacturers, at least for their online market, when they're doing a 5-pack, why not do it like that? I don't know. And I can't believe no one ever really focused on that. That's just me, though. Because it makes it sexy.
The problem that you have is it ends up making the product seem like it has a lower perceived value. Because when things come in the bundle,
I mean, you take a 5, let's just pretend you have a 10 count box, you got a $5 box price, but you wrap it in some black butcher paper for like, and I'm talking about specifically kind of online sales or, specific event stuff. And you put a nice Sobermesa sticker, a Querida sticker on it. I mean, your cost of that is 10 cents, 20 cents. It's like nothing. And I still think you can do that.
And I don't really care about, I'm not in the packaging business. So it's not like, for me, packaging is just a cost. So it's not like the only person I make wealthy when I'm doing all these boxes is the box maker. It's not like I'm making money on all of these gizmos. It's just a question of, consumers for the most part. Again, those consumers who smoke a lot of cigars, they care less about it. But your average consumer, they do really care about that packaging. It does make a big difference to them. And they definitely
look at would be, well, and I think it helps for sure. Like, the question though is that, online sales, like, you don't really get to see the box before you buy it. You buy it because you like what Saka makes, or you like what John Huber makes, or you really like this from this specific factory. I don't know if anybody's ever done this, and you've been in retail, so maybe you can answer this question. But how many people actually walk in and buy a box of cigars? And I'm not talking about an event. I'm talking about just, it's a random Tuesday afternoon. They stop home from work. Every time I've been to B&M, I see people pick up 1, 2, maybe 3 cigars, maybe 10, but no one ever buy a box. Like, how many box sales does a traditional brick and mortar retailer do?
Not that many, but it's the box that serves as the honey to attract the fly to pull that 1 or 2 cigars out. Whereas if it's a bundle just sitting there, or it's in a bin, if the entire store, look, if you have a store that's set up where it's all bins, then you're on an equal footing. But when you have a store that's partially boxes and partially bins, they look at the stuff in the bins as being the discount product. They don't look at it the same way as they look at product that comes out of the Tabernacle box or the Padron box.
Right.
I mean, and that's just simply, look, from my perspective, I mean, I'm in the business of making and selling cigars. So it's always a balance between trying to make it aesthetically pleasing enough to make the consumer think it has the value that it should have. At the same time, also trying to make it where it doesn't dramatically drive the cost up. Right. But I can tell you, like on my crazy Cigar Federation project, those box costs they're stupid. The cigar's already a stupid price, so why am I not going to spend an extra $7 to make the box extra special at that point? If the guy's going to spend $22 a cigar, he'll spend $23 to have it come in an unbelievably glorious package. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
And and that was one of the questions that with the Querida, that's a pretty crappy box it's packed in. I mean, it's nothing special. It's a very simplistic Partagas Series D number 4 style box. It's about as cheap as you can get, short of making it entirely out of plywood. And it was, but I was trying to keep the cigar under $10. Had I made the box a bit nicer, it would have forced the price to be over $10. So I made the conscious decision that, okay, I think for this consumer that's going to smoke this style cigar, he will be less impacted by the box. At the same time, even though you may not realize it, the band on that cigar is a stupid expensive band compared to most cigar bands. It looks very simple, but it's a very intricate band. So instead of me spending a penny and a half on a band, I'm actually spending about 3.5 cents to produce that band. So to have that band on that cigar at the consumer end, it's costing him like an extra 6 to 7 cents a cigar by the time the retailer, the distributor and the retailer mark it all up. But I say to myself, well, look, the guy's holding the cigar in his hand for an hour to 2 hours. He's looking at that band. Is it worth an extra 5 cents for him to have a very positive impression of the aesthetic of that cigar? And I made the decision that, okay, I'm not going to spend the money on the box, but I am going to spend an extra penny and a half on each of the bands to make them something a little bit more presentable. But these are all, these are judgment calls, as to what's right and what's wrong. I mean,
yeah,
there's no easy answer. But I do know that cigars in themselves are not just a matter of the cigar. It's the experience that the consumer gets when they're enjoying the cigar. And the experience is more than the cigar in itself. The packaging, the perceived equity in the brand, the value. When you see something that's really well executed and well done, it makes you understand that, well, look, if they spent this much attention on this, then probably that attention to detail spills over to these other facets of the product. And,
yeah. I mean, I know, and I agree with most of what you're saying. I mean, everything, has a value, and everything goes to the overall, the total experience. But at the end of the day, like, and I'm not a big guy in packaging if it's not obvious. And I'm kind of like, I don't go around talking about, well, man, Saka's band was really fucking pretty. The thing I talk about was Saka's cigar, and he fucking good. And I think that it kind of ties back in the point that you had about, these one and done releases and stuff like that, is that, if you have all that and a great cigar, it's unforgettable.
You remember the Grimalkin? Remember Grimalkin?
Oh, I fucking love that cigar.
Love a cigar. Stupid name, stupid band.
I think I still have 5 left in my humidor.
Every time I'd smoke one, I'd go, man, I really wish you'd just done something with this branding, because I feel dumb smoking it. You know what I mean?
But it was a good cigar, though.
It was a good cigar, but is it still selling today?
Well, it's not even in production anymore.
Exactly.
Because it got rebranded. But yes.
I mean, there was something wrong with it. So if the cigar was great and the price was good, then why didn't it succeed as is? It didn't succeed as is because the consumer wasn't identifying with the branding. So you need the consumer to – it's not just enough for it to be a really good product. It also has to present itself well, because, the typical consumer is not you and it's not me. The typical consumer, there's a lot of competition in the marketplace. And when you pick up something, when you pick up an Opus X, you're expecting it to be special just because when you look at that band, and that band on an Opus X, that band is like, that's like a 6-cent band, for God's sakes, by itself, So, it's a balancing act. If life was as simple as just making great cigars and putting them in cello tubes and in bundles, that would be great for me. You know how much time and effort that would save if it was possible to sell a lot of cigars that way? I would be happy as a pig in shit, but it just regretfully doesn't work that way.
No, it's the Crayola project.
Crayola project. We should have had you on the name council, Steve, when he was talking about.
I know, man. I should have, man. I fucking dropped the ball on that deal.
Definitely would have been sued, but would have been a glorious time. Steve, we've had you on for just over 2 hours here, and I want to thank you very much for being on our show. We'll have to. I think it's been. I want to say it's been like probably 11 months since we had you on last.
I'm starting to think there was no
September of 2015.
There you go.
September 2015. I was in Europe.
No love for the fat guy anymore. I don't know. What did I do?
I think what I'd like to do is
Nothing. You're just always traveling.
yeah, you are always traveling, but I think what we'd like to do is have you on before the IPCPR this year, so we don't go another full year before talking to you again. I think that would be perfect to get that energy as you go into the IPCPR in 2017.
That would be great. So you really like cigars and with bundles with nothing on them, huh?
Dude, like, yeah. I mean, I don't care. Like, I mean, you're right. I am different, but all the people on SigFed that I market to are just kind of like me. Like, packaging is just superfluous waste, in my opinion.
I got 4 sizes of Umbagog that had to get imported before. Some of them have bands on them. Some of them have bundle stickers on them. Some don't have a bundle sticker. Some don't have bands on them. It's a total hit and miss. And I don't even know what to do with them.
As long as you write Umbagog on it, just write however the hell you say that stupid name, Umbagog, and just give them to me, I can sell them. Easily.
All right, well, I'll send you an email.
It's all about whoever makes it. It's either whoever makes it and is it good. Having your name tied to it will get people to try it, and then when they see the price point.
That's actually what I was smoking when we started this show. Is I was smoking an Umbagog. So for me, it's a great cigar. It's got no commercial value whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned, because there's just no way for the consumer to identify what it is. And hey, maybe we can work out something. I unload them to you.
We can work it out.
So,
dude, done and done. You know my email.
I do.
We can do that.
Let me smoke that cray and see what I think. See if it's worthy. Yeah. See if you're worthy.
Hey, smoke my cunt first, and then smoke cray.
Excellent. I can't wait.
Worst name ever. The cigar's pretty good.
It's the best name ever, and I know it's a stupid ass name.
I went into it
fantastic.
I went into it. I wanted to hate that cigar because I told Logan, I'm like, that is the stupidest fucking name I've ever heard. I want to slap you across the internet. And then I smoked it. I'm like, God damn, why couldn't you just make a shitty cigar so I could just shit all over it and shit all over your stupid name? But the cigar is actually pretty good.
I think the dumbest name was that. What was that Caldwell thing with the cock? What was that one?
Oh yeah.
With the cock?
Yeah, it was. Yes.
Oh, swollen cock.
Swollen cock.
Oh my god. Yeah, that
one was pretty clever.
And people were busting James's balls over morphine.
One, was Duncan Hines. Was one lost and found release. Duncan Hines. I thought was fucking clever as fuck. I got one right now. I'm about to release the name of one we're going to be doing in short order in a colored project, and I'm releasing the name now, although it has been in the wild. It's preempted pre-August 8th, but I'm letting you go. Get ready, Saka. Your mind's about to fucking blow up. You ready?
Can't wait.
Be so horny.
Oh, we so horny. 2 Live Crew. Yeah.
Be so horny, baby. It's going to be awesome, dude.
I'm glad I'm not on his marketing team. That's all I can say.
Yeah, man. I don't need a marketing team.
Oh, not with genius like that. Why would you?
Yeah, man. I don't need a marketing team. I do occasionally ask John. I'm like, hey, man, I got this really crazy fucking idea. And then John will be like, that's a little far, Logan.
Yeah, I tend to be the marketing voice of reason. Wherever possible, anyways.
One question, I don't know. I may be stepping in a minefield here, but what's the deal? Did you guys shoot Robbie or something? He's not around anymore, or
he took a job with Membacho.
He took a job with Membacho.
He's the brand manager.
You haven't been reading your half wheel.
That's funny because
about a month ago.
Because it was never posted on Half Wheel.
Yes, it was.
No, Charlie never posted that.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. That's why it's funny, because Rob sent him the press release, and it was never posted.
I can't believe it.
I thought it was. Oh, I'm thinking their new packaging. Yeah,
the new packaging. Yeah, the new packaging was posted with a quote from Robbie. So, but yes, right, Robbie's the new brand manager for Mombacho.
Oh, good luck to Robbie. I hope he does well.
We'll check in. We'll see how he's feeling in about 3 months.
Yeah, we'll see in about 3 months. But I'm gonna wrap it up here because I got to get some food on, And again, Steve, we'll not make it another 14 months, but we'll try and have you on before the IPCPR, assuming you're not all over the place. We'll try and nail you down wherever you are in the world, probably at a B&M in the back somewhere, I'm sure.
Nah. All right, guys. Hey, I really appreciate it. You have a great night. Thanks, everyone that listened.
Thank you very much as well. Everybody have a great weekend.
Night.
Stay safe.
Bye.